Before we begin any recipe, we must wash our hands, and we wash them frequently during the course of a recipe, especially one which in this case involves handling the food constantly. There's no sense wasting a pair of PVC or latex gloves because you can just wash your hands and wash them frequently. So I do have a double boiler, but in this case I elected to use the Pyrex glass bowl in a pot method in order to show folks with no double boiler how to set up a double boiler for cooking their chocolate. When you put your chocolate in a double boiler, it's heated up by the boiling water, not the element. The stove heats the water, then the water heats the chocolate. So the chocolate never exceeds the boiling point of water. This is why we use a double boiler for sensitive things like chocolate and some sauces, especially milk or cream-based sauces. It's actually even better than those little mini fondue pots you can buy. So the first thing to go in is the cacao butter. I found this at hippie stores. It's fair trade organic. It's just lumps of delicious smelling white solid fat, chocolate fat. These are the oils they take out of the chocolate before they sell it to you, and it's expensive to put it back in, but it sure makes the chocolate good. Half a bar of the dark baker's, unsweetened baker's chocolate, and it's about a ratio of 25% dark and 75% cacao butter. You can play with those ratios. Too much cacao butter and it floats to the top, and the dark solids go to the bottom, and you don't get a really nice mix. You wind up with your chocolate separating. Not enough, and you get too bitter and strong of a chocolate. I add pure vanilla extract. This is not the artificial stuff. I know it costs more, but you use very little and it lasts, so why not get the good stuff? So, there it goes into the chocolate. At this point, I should have put it on the stove and put all the other ingredients in a separate bowl. That was a big mistake, and it's the reason this chocolate got ruined. It wasn't just the amount of liquid stuff, but when I put it in. So, consider all the rest of this as being stuff you put in a separate bowl, and skip the coconut palm syrup entirely and just go with the coconut palm sugar, which you'll see me add later when I try to fix the chocolate. I really should have sped this section up. I'm just fussing around trying to find coconut cream powder. I never really did find the coconut cream powder. I wound up going and getting a can of coconut milk, which if you don't stir it up gives you coconut cream on the top and coconut water underneath. And so just by grabbing a couple of scoops from the top, I was able to put coconut cream into my chocolate to milk it up a bit. None of these are all packs of curry spice. None of them was, and tapioca starch. None of them was the coconut cream powder I thought I had. You really must put it on the shopping list. So there's a quick flash of the can of coconut cream powder, which for some reason didn't record. And I think that's all the honey there that I put into this one. I got a fresh jar of honey for the marzipan, but I think this was all the honey I used in this case. And went to some trouble to make sure you could see me put the honey in. I really should have sped this part up. Honey's so slow. Got a spatula. And I think I gave it to the dog to lick out afterwards because dogs love honey. So why not? It makes it easier to clean and there's less waste. I mean, if someone eats it, it's not wasted, right? So there we go. Spatula, spatula, spatula. Yeah, I've learned a year ago, if I put the honey in before I melt the chocolate, I will get soft chocolate and the honey will pool. Same goes for the coconut cream. If I put it in before it's melted, like I'm doing here, I'll get soft chocolate. If I want the chocolate to harden, I have to put them in after it's melted. I don't understand the difference, but there definitely is a difference, and that was the big mistake I made here. Along with using liquid coconut palm sugar syrup, that coconut syrup you see in the background. Shouldn't have added that at all. Just should have gone with the sugar or more. Ideally, the thing is that the drier your sweetener, like coconut palm sugar, or if you're still trust the bags of white sugar you buy at the store, that stuff also gives you harder chocolate. But look at all that water I just poured in there. It's essentially pouring in water. And it gave me a really soft chocolate. So, good stuff, wrong use of it. Save it for the coffee. It has a bit of a strong burnt flavor, so it's only good for strong things like coffee and chocolate. If you put it in stuff like tea, you tend to taste it. So there, I turned it down to simmer because it was boiling, and I just left it and went off to work on the marzipan part of this project, because this is going to be marzipan balls dipped in chocolate. Now, the flavoring I used in this marzipan was a product you get here locally that's got all these wonderful spices in it. But I'm going to recommend that you use some more vanilla or some rosewater, or even leave it natural. You could also put in a little bit of ginger for that ginger snap effect. Just mix it into the powder before you blend the honey in, and then you pour the honey in as you go, allowing you to get that thick paste. Now, time to wash your hands again, because you're gonna, there you go. You'll be putting your hands all over this stuff. I used a melon baller to measure up the sizes, and it kept getting sticky, and I had to take it to the sink and wash it. My hands did too. But so first I just basically got a bunch, there, it's me washing it. I got a bunch of the melon balls, and then I rolled them up in my hands, which I'm going to show you now, how I rolled them up. After they were in the melon baller, I take them out, and it fell apart, so I gave it I compressed it a bit with my hand, and then I just rolled them like kids with Play-Doh, one after another. It took me a few hours. I mean, it took all afternoon to make this recipe. It's not a recipe for people who are in a hurry. It's a spectacular recipe. So we chill the marzipan balls. That's all of them. We chill them in the fridge and tend to the chocolate. It needs stirred, and there's a last lump of cacao butter there that isn't quite melted, so I returned it for a little bit longer and melted it, and then I brought it over to the counter. There we go. Try not to spill it. We got pets underfoot, and onto the counter it goes. You can still see that lump of cacao butter, but it's melting. And now, recognizing that it was not going to solidify, I added coconut palm sugar, thinking that this will help it solidify a bit better. It didn't. Maybe it did. It gave it a grainier texture. That's the downside with this sugar, is it's grainy. Perhaps, I don't know. I don't think it, because if you dissolved it in water, you'd have the same problem as the syrup. So it's kind of a nice thing to have a grainy texture, but it's not the usual. Once again, hand washing, because we're going to be touching the food again. So I put toothpicks into each ball. These are little oriental bamboo toothpicks you shake out of their jar. And each ball got a toothpick, because that's how I'm going to dip them. Now, if the chocolate had turned out, I would have taken the toothpicks out after the final dipping, before plating them, and they would have been just, pick them up with your finger. But nobody seemed to mind picking them up with the toothpick. Not even the fact that they were sticking to the platter. No one seemed to mind it. These things just got consumed in a hurry. Everybody had at least two, and they're rich. They're very rich. So all the toothpicks are in, and I thought at first that I was going to use the spoon, and I kind of used the spoon to ladle some stuff over it. I was having a problem with the coconut, with everything separating, again, because I hadn't melted the chocolate first. But your first layers are going to be thin. This is why we do 3 dips, because the first one is just too thin. So that spoon turned out to be unnecessary. But I kept stirring, and I occasionally ladled chocolate over the balls. And dippity-dip-dip, away we go. As you can see, I was getting a real mess. I was getting frustrated about that, and I finally decided to live with it and add it back in before the final dip. And in fact, the final sloppy chocolate got put into a bowl and into the fridge, and I've been using it to make hot chocolate. I just take a big old spoonful and mix it in with some hot almond milk and add a little whiskey, because what's hot chocolate without a little whiskey? Okay, you can use rum. Now, you teetotalers out there could just have your almond milk and chocolate. So there's a batch. I dipped a few of them an extra time because they had chilled enough and they were really, really thin and pale. And back into the fridge it goes. Later, after it's chilled, wash your hands again because you're going to be handling food. And here they are, chilled out of the fridge, going for another dip. They didn't stick too badly this time. In fact, at this point, I still didn't know there was something wrong. I was starting to get the clue, though, by the way they were. Instead of snapping off the wax, they were gluey. And taking a really long time to solidify on the balls. They just really weren't. So I was feeling a little frustrated as they got more gluey, but I just persevered, thinking it's too late now. I was realizing that the mistakes I had made by putting the other ingredients in before it was melted. And I was getting annoyed and tired and frustrated. I had to ladle them all off, and so I was putting a bunch in at a time, and it was just, I was getting a lot of mess. But, you know, it's good. It's still tasty. I mean, I had been kind of tasting as I went along and, you know, lick a spoon before I stick it in the sink, eat the remainder bit of marzipan that doesn't fit. And I knew that this was going to be delicious. And it is. I still have a couple in the freezer, and I've been eating them frozen like popsicles, and they're just perfect like that. So the rest of them get all put onto the wax paper. And yes, it's a cookie sheet lined with wax paper is what I'm using. And that allows me to peel them off. They're harder to peel off the pan than they are off the wax paper, especially when you've got proper chocolate. And yes, sometimes the toothpicks fell out. I had to push them back in a fresh spot. If you find that your ball just spins on the toothpick instead of turning, take it out, jam it back in a new spot, and it'll be stiff again. So there we go. Another batch ready to go back in the fridge to chill. And then you wash your hands before you pull them out again. I'd say there's about a half an hour, maybe an hour lapsing between each one. I put my hand washing clip in the wrong spot. Sorry, I'm not fixing it now because I'm working on the narration. So you get to see my error. So here I am. It's gluier than before. At this point I'm like, oh, how am I going to get these up without then ripping them? And every time I force them up off the paper, the toothpick comes loose. I was having a hard time with this recipe. I was getting annoyed. So I finally thought, you know what? Maybe I can get them off there easier if I use a fresh sheet. Plus, I'll have less chocolate to deal with. And the dog was getting her nose in. She has a tendency to stick her nose way too close to the food. Until you have to be impolite with her. So, there. I decided to start a fresh batch, fresh sheet, and then all that extra chocolate could be put back in the melting pot. They look nice, though, don't they? All nice and shiny. And back to speed up as I struggle to deal with these balls threatening to fall apart on me. But yeah, I'm dipping them. The camera's off. I must have had to change the battery at some point. When I set it back, it wasn't right. But here we go. As you can see, I'm running low. So as I went, I was throwing more in. And I actually had to stop halfway through this process and stick the chocolate back on the double boiler. Because it was, you know, a couple hours had elapsed now since I'd melted it. And it was starting to solidify and getting harder to put on the marzipan balls. This was the final dipping, however. This was the third and final dip, I'm pretty sure. And they came out nice. They looked nice and thick at this point. You didn't see the marzipan through anymore. So, but as you can see, it had gotten too solid to actually dip on the balls. So back onto the double boiler it had to go. I thought I was going to put the lid on it, and then I realized, no, before I do that, I got to put these back in the fridge to keep them chilled, because part of the secret to chocolate-covered balls is to have them chilled. So once the chocolate was melted enough, again, I put the hand washing in the wrong spot. I have to learn to use my software. So yeah, I remelted it, pulled these back out of the fridge, and away we go. As you can see, there's a lot of waste chocolate. That's what I used And I just, after it was all done, I just put all that into a bowl and put it in the fridge, and I've been using it for, in a covered bowl. I've been using it for hot chocolate recipes, or to put in a coffee or something. You heat up the almond milk, and then you stir in the chocolate, and then you mix in some coffee or whatever you want to do. If you've got hot coffee, I use cold brew now, but if you use hot coffee, you could just stir it into your hot coffee. You don't even need to add any cream, and just get this wonderful dark mocha, and it'll include all the sweetener you could possibly want. So, phew, what a lot of work that was, and it's done. Into the fridge. Wash my hands again, because now it's time to plate it up. They've been chilling for another half an hour, you see. So into the platter they go. Most of them went to the party, but I saved about a dozen out for home so that I and Dan could enjoy these at home. And if I had a guest over, which I haven't, I could have shared them. But it's been 25 below, and nobody wants to go visiting at 25 below. And the two people who routinely visit me don't have vehicles either, so they're even less likely to come over at 25 below, 30 below. It's been bitter cold. I haven't been going out. So plating it up. The whole time I do these recipes, I've got YouTube videos running on the TV, so that's the noise you hear in the background. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about copyright violations. So for the party,